Attila, byname Flagellum Dei, Latin, Scourge of God, died 453, king of the Huns from 434 to 453, ruling jointly with his elder brother Bleda until 445. He was one of the greatest of the barbarian rulers who assailed the Roman Empire, invading the southern Balkan provinces and Greece and then Gaul and Italy. In legend he appears under the name Etzel in the Nibelungenlied and under the name Atli in Icelandic sagas. Attacks on the Eastern Empire. The empire that Attila and his elder brother Bleda inherited seems to have stretched from the Alps and the Baltic in the west to somewhere near the Caspian Sea in the east. Their first known action on becoming joint rulers was the negotiation of a peace treaty with the Eastern Roman Empire, which was concluded at the city of Margus Pozervac. By the terms of the treaty, the Romans undertook to double the subsidies they had been paying to the Huns and in the future to pay £700 (300 kilograms) of gold each year. From 435 to 439 the activities of Attila are unknown, but he seems to have been engaged in subduing barbarian peoples to the north or east of his dominions. The Eastern Romans do not appear to have paid the sums stipulated in the Treaty of Margus, and so in 441, when their forces were occupied in the west and on the eastern frontier, Attila launched a heavy assault on the Danubian frontier of the Eastern Empire. He captured and razed a number of important cities, including Singidunum, Belgrade. The Eastern Romans managed to arrange a truce for the year 442 and recalled their forces from the west. But in 443 Attila resumed his attack. He began by taking and destroying towns on the Danube and then drove into the interior of the empire toward Naissus, Nice, and Serdica, Sofia, both of which he destroyed. He next turned toward Constantinople, took Philippopolis, defeated the main Eastern Roman forces in a succession of battles, and so reached the sea both north and south of Constantinople. It was hopeless for the Hun archers to attack the great walls of the capital, so Attila turned on the remnants of the empire's forces, which had withdrawn into the peninsula of Gallipoli, and destroyed them. In the peace treaty that followed, he obliged the Eastern Empire to pay the arrears of tribute, which he calculated at £6,000 (2,700 kilograms) of gold, and he trebled the annual tribute, thenceforth extorting £2,100 (950 kilograms) of gold each year. Attila's movements after the conclusion of peace in the autumn of 443 are unknown. About 445 he murdered his brother Bleda and thenceforth ruled the Huns as an autocrat. He made his second great attack on the Eastern Roman Empire in 447, but little is known of the details of the campaign. It was planned on an even bigger scale than that of 441 to 443, and its main weight was directed toward the provinces of Lower Scythia and Moesia in southeastern Europe, i.e., farther to the east than the earlier assault. He engaged the Eastern Empire's forces on the Udus-Vid River and defeated them, but he himself suffered serious losses. He then devastated the Balkan provinces and drove southward into Greece, where he was only stopped at Thermopylae. The 3 years following the invasion were filled with complicated negotiations between Attila and the diplomats of the Eastern Roman Emperor Theodosius II. Much information about these diplomatic encounters has been preserved in the fragments of the history of Priscus of Panium, who visited Attila's headquarters in Wallachia in company with a Roman embassy in 449. The treaty by which the war was terminated was harsher than that of 443. The Eastern Romans had to evacuate a wide belt of territory south of the Danube, and the tribute payable by them was continued, though the rate is not known. Invasion of Gaul. Attila's next great campaign was the invasion of Gaul in 451. Hitherto, he appears to have been on friendly terms with the Roman general Aetius, the real ruler of the West at this time, and his motives for marching into Gaul have not been recorded. He announced that his objective in the west was the kingdom of the Visigoths, a Germanic people who had conquered parts of the two Roman empires centered on Toulouse, and that he had no quarrel with the Western Emperor, Valentinian III. But in the spring of 450, Honoria, the emperor's sister, sent her ring to Attila, asking him to rescue her from a marriage that had been arranged for her. Attila thereupon claimed Honoria as his wife and demanded half the Western Empire as her dowry. When Attila had already entered Gaul, Aetius reached an agreement with the Visigothic king, Theodoric I, to combine their forces in resisting the Huns. Many legends surround the campaign that followed. It is certain, however, that Attila almost succeeded in occupying Aurelianum Orléans before the Allies arrived. Indeed, the Huns had already gained a footing inside the city when Aetius and Theodoric forced them to withdraw. The decisive engagement was the Battle of the Catalaunian Plains, or, according to some authorities, of Maurisa. Both places are unidentified. After fierce fighting, in which the Visigothic king was killed, Attila withdrew and shortly afterward retired from Gaul. This was his first and only defeat. In 452 the Huns invaded Italy and sacked several cities, including Aquileia, Patavium, Padua, Verona, Brixia, Brescia, Bergamo, and Mediolanum, Milan. Aetius could do nothing to halt them. But the famine and pestilence raging in Italy in that year compelled the Huns to leave without crossing the Apennines. In 453 Attila was intending to attack the Eastern Empire, where the new emperor Marcian had refused to pay the subsidies agreed upon by his predecessor, Theodosius II. But during the night following his marriage, Attila died in his sleep. Those who buried him and his treasures were subsequently put to death by the Huns so that his grave might never be discovered. He was succeeded by his sons, who divided his empire among them. Priscus, who saw Attila when he visited his camp in 448, described him as a short, squat man with a large head, deep-set eyes, flat nose, and a thin beard. According to the historians, Attila was, though of an irritable, blustering, and truculent disposition, a very persistent negotiator and by no means pitiless. When Priscus attended a banquet given by him, he noticed that Attila was served off wooden plates and ate only meat, whereas his chief lieutenants dined off silver platters loaded with dainties. No description of his qualities as a general survives, but his successes before the invasion of Gaul show him to have been an outstanding commander. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe to our channel.